Hello, Merlin and I are relaxing together as we do every evening. I don't think he's aware that it's Saturday evening rather than Friday evening when I usually make my videos. I don't think he's aware that this past week has had a different rhythm than other weeks usually do. It hasn't for him, but for me, it most certainly has. This past week has been probably the most gratifying and the most rewarding and probably one of the most important weeks of my entire life. Having thought about opening my own Academy for Languages and Literatures and Cultures for decades now, I've finally gone ahead and done it. And this past week, I had the pleasure and the honor of getting to know about 75 individuals who signed up right off the bat to do this kind of thing with me. So I want to begin by saying from the bottom of my heart, thank you ever so much for helping me make this become a reality. I want to express my gratitude and true appreciation for the fact that people are interested in the opportunities that I see to expand education to new horizons, to really provide independent adult learners with a way to make lifelong learning not a buzzword, but a reality, and to provide them with small group one-on-one interaction that enable them to continue to grow, their abilities and grow their knowledge and to grow all sorts of things. So again, thank you so much to these 75 different individuals. So many of you actually signed up for not just one, but two or three circles. I want to say I'm very sorry to a handful of people that we couldn't find time slots for you, but I hope that we'll be able to get you in some circles or seminars come June. And I trust I can thank in advance the people who have signed up already. If you can continue to spread the word and make this grow, I hope to expand and have more offerings and just really have this become the kind of academy I've always talked about for those of you who followed me for years. As I said, I have found it a real pleasure and honor to get to know the people who have come to me, because you are an incredibly accomplished and variegated and just amazing group of people from all over the world, from India and China and all parts of Europe and the Americas, and from all walks of life. I have college students and I have people who have just retired, but I'm really happy to see that so many people are people in their middle ages in between who are able to take. Now modern society is structured that we can take an hour or so out of our lives and structure it to have not just the workaday week be working only, but actually to have this be this sort of intellectual growth. And the most amazing thing to me about the people who have come to me is that they are coming for languages and literature and this kind of thing, but they are not just languages and literature people. I have doctors, I have lawyers, I have engineers, I have mathematicians, I have scientists, chemists, physicists, musical conductors, all sorts of people, software engineers, who are also interested in languages and literatures. And I just find that wonderful, because I don't think that people who are into languages and literatures reciprocate that so much and show interest in sort of these harder disciplines. And so getting to know that and seeing the deep, rich interest and background that people who have these other interests also have in these interests makes me realize what an incredibly well-rounded group of people are. These autodidacts and people are very, very well-rounded. And so we educators often say that teaching, educating is a way to continue to learn yourself. And that's certainly true, always true to some degree, but it's incredibly true for me this week in the sense that meeting these well-rounded people has made me question, in a good way, whether I am as well-rounded as I thought I was. If you had asked me before last week about various traits, I think I would have tried not to be at all vain about it, but I would have said, if you had asked me, are you well-rounded? I think I would have honestly said, well, I've spent my entire life learning lots of different languages so that I could go live in different countries and different cultures and read different literatures and understand different points of view. So yeah, I think I'm pretty well-rounded. I try to be, and I do try to be. And I have done those things. But those things are all in the area of languages and literatures, and they're not really widespread over other endeavors. And that's really gotten me thinking about lifelong learning, which, as I said, is not a buzzword to me, and about the kinds of things that make one well-rounded and keep one's mind stimulated. What's the value of lifelong learning? If you continue learning your whole life, your brain stays young, your brain stays supple, your brain stays fresh. But in order to keep it that way, in order to keep that kind of learning, I don't think all kinds of learning are equal. I think the kind of learning that stimulates the brain and keeps it young is the kind of learning of new information, something you don't know how to do. You don't know the procedure, you don't know how it works, and you learn it. So this could be something like, I don't know, archery, or a kind of botany, making bonsai trees, or many things, learning how to play a musical instrument. One way, great way of keeping the mind subtle is certainly reading and discussing great books. That's why it's an integral part of my program, and I encourage everybody who's interested into that to really, that encyclopedic set has been out there for 60, 70 years, and there are other opportunities for doing it. Please explore them. There's the online great books that I talked about before, and they have a really nice twist, different way of doing that might be more suitable to you. If you're interested in that, look in the description, and there's an offer that I want to help them pass on, because I want people to read and discuss, not necessarily with me. If my timing and the way I do it suits you, please come join us. So reading and discussing hard ideas with other people certainly is a way to keep the brain fresh. But as I was saying, I think that what really does it is newness, novelty, and getting fresh abilities into your brain and keeping it growing in that sense. And in that regard, I do believe that a strong case could be made that language learning is perhaps the most fundamental kind of brain stimulating, good thing for lifelong learning. First and foremost, there's that study from a number of years back about how learning a foreign language really and truly does help your brain not get Alzheimer's or dementia, but if you do come down with it, stave off the effects for an additional 5 years. I don't think anything else is sort of proven to truly keep your brain in that sense, such as a language. And it makes sense, because language really is our operating system. Language is the lens through which we see and do everything. And so yes, consciously putting another language into your brain has got to be one of the best ways of keeping your brain stimulated. But that's gotten me thinking in this regard, are all kinds of language learning equal? And if not, what are the different kinds of language learning that we can see in this light? And what is the kind that is best for stimulating your brain? And I think that there are three kinds of language learning seen in this light. And the first one, the primary one, type 1 language learning, this is the one that is newness. This is the one that's exploration. This is the one that's novelty. You don't know this language. It's a brand new language to you, and you choose to learn it. Whether you're monolingual in a background, bilingual in a background, whether or not you have school learning experience, that is, other people told you at a certain point you're going to study a language and you studied it in school the way you studied some other subject. Maybe you learned it, maybe you didn't. All that aside, I think the first language that you take as an adult and say, I want to learn this. I want to take charge of the learning process. I want to teach myself this language. That language is going to teach you a whole new set of words, a whole new set of rules for stringing them together and using it. And the novelty of learning that new language, I think, is probably the strongest, most invigorating, brain freshening, keeping your brain young kind of thing that you can do. So that kind of learning I'm referring to as type 1 learning. And I think that that's the fundamental kind. I think that then there are two other types that can diverge from that. I think type 1 learning keeps your brain fresh as long as it's kind of in the learning phase. When you're still learning new words, you're still learning new rules, it's still kind of fresh, you're still getting exposed to it. I think that, for better or worse though, when you start to become really functional in it, when it becomes familiar to you, that novelty is gone, you still develop, it's still a learning process, but it's different. So from that point, I think most people, when they learn a foreign language, at some point probably get to a stage when, in a sense, maybe consciously or unconsciously think it's good enough, or maybe they actually come to a plateau and they can't grow anymore. But you come to a stage when basically you're not going to progress unless you decide to make real deliberate practice part of your thing. When you decide, I'm really going to knuckle down and learn it. So type 2 language learning, I would say, is when you have taken a language past the functional stage and you decide, I'm really going to master it. It's expertise. So taking knowledge and developing expertise is certainly a valuable form of knowledge and learning and growth. I think you can develop expertise in a language by different fashions. You can do it as a scholar, become a professor of the language and write research about it. You can do it as a translator or an interpreter, or just as a person who says, I'm going to make sure that I continue to really learn, expand, and to develop a rich vocabulary so that I can read complicated books in this language just as I read it in my other language, just because I want to. So developing expertise or mastery in a language is good, but I'm not sure that it has the same stimulating things because it's not really newness. It's going depth. It's deeper. Stepping back again, I think that type 1 learning can be repeated a number of times. I think that the first language that you do will have the biggest oomph, and the second language is also probably there. Going back to that Alzheimer's research, if I remember what Thomas Bach, the researcher from Scotland, told us at the Polyglot conference in Reykjavik, though that it's learning one foreign language has that effect on of staving off dementia. Learning a second one doesn't have so much of a reinforcement, and learning further ones the payback is not as strong. But still, that dementia aside, I think that newness, that learning new ideas, I certainly think that it can be repeated with the first language, the second language, third even maybe. For a handful of languages, I think you can do it. When you're learning up to a handful of languages, I would consider that can probably be all type 1. And what you're doing is you're building that comparative framework. You're building a neural net to look at and see things and help you remember them because you've got a comparative context for looking at it in. So yeah, I do think the first one will be the strongest, and then the second one. And after you get to 3, 4, or 5 of them, I'm not sure you can do type 1 learning anymore. I'm not sure that language learning is a new thing anymore. Thank God you are now a polyglot when you know 5 languages. And if you learn your 6th language or your 7th language or your 8th language, you're going to find this is continued, obviously, learning and growth as well. But just as taking one language and mastering it and going really deep is a different kind of learning, I think that once you get to a true polyglot stage and you find, language learning isn't really such a challenge anymore. I know how to do it. It's just a question of putting a little more time, a little more effort. And so you develop more languages by finding the time and being passionate about it. And so you develop breadth. That's growth in terms of breadth and sort of perspective and horizons. So that's a certain kind of knowledge as well. That's very good to have. That's good to do. But I'm also not sure that is helping the mind grow, because just looking at it myself, I have now for years, it's been years and years since I could do type 1 learning. I've been basically exclusively involved in type 2, going deeper and deeper, and type 3 going broader and broader, and putting kind of most of my eggs, if not all of my eggs, in this basket. And now I meet this wonderful group of people who are mathematicians and musicians and scientists and other things and seem so much more well-rounded than I do. It makes me feel like I wish I could go back and I love cats. I could learn some zoology. I need to learn something new, something that I don't know how to do. And so to just have this sort of self-reflection, I think that one does not want to continue to spread oneself all over the board and do all sorts of different things. Yeah, it would be kind of interesting to, if there were an academy like mine, where maybe I could go and develop some sort of knowledge of zoology or botany or something. There might be a hope for me, but it's been so long since I've done anything math or scientifically oriented. I think I know the way that I want to try to make my brain work and be a bit more well-rounded. You may have seen in some of my other videos, it's been a while since I made one at my desk where I have that long row of colored pencils, and maybe you can see in some of the videos too, there's a bunch of books up above there. Those are all art books. You saw maybe in some of my scriptorium videos, I tried to draw, I tried to do things. Drawing is something I have not done. I stopped doing when I was a child, and I stopped and started. That's something where I feel that my mind is growing. That's something where I can look at an art book and say, that's how you make a face. Oh, this is the kind of practice that I need to do. Yes, I am looking back at the drawings I made a year ago. I am making a lot of progress, but I'm still not any good at all. And I have so much more to learn and grow. Please hold me to this, those wonderful individuals who have signed up for me and in my academy. To make myself more rounded, I'm going to somehow, by hook or by crook, make some time every day to get back to doing art on a regular basis as a regular practice, the same way I give you advice about studying your languages on a regular basis. I need to do that myself with some other walk of life. And I think that's the best walk of life for me at this point. So those are just some thoughts about what kind of language learning, different kinds of language learning, and the best kind for stimulating your mind. I hope that was interesting and useful to you again. Again, those of you who are interested in my academy, thank you so much for helping this dream come true, and let's continue to grow it together. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week, probably from now on Saturday evenings rather than Friday evenings. It won't make any difference to Merlin.